Hello everyone, welcome back to the Round Number One YouTube channel. You're listening to the first recording of Round Number One Radio. Round Number One Radio is different from our regular uploads in length. I will deliver news reports and then give my opinions. The entire upload should be at least or more than 30 minutes. Regular uploads will be shorter, around 3 to 10 minutes. So, I've returned from a long vacation and was set to record what was the biggest news in sports entertainment last week. WWE Raw will leave linear television to Netflix starting in January 2025, and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson will join TKO's board of directors. Those two news report items are insignificant now. For today, I need to inform the listeners about the newest lawsuit on Vince McMahon. On January 25th, 2024, the Wall Street Journal first reported that a woman who received a payout from the former WWE boss Vince McMahon accused McMahon, the company WWE, and a former executive of sex trafficking in a new lawsuit. The former WWE employee Janel Grant filed a lawsuit in the U.S. District Court for the District of Connecticut on last Thursday, naming McMahon, WWE, and a former head of town relations, which ended up being John Laurinaitis, as defendants. Now, I encourage all wrestling fans to please download the complaint. I think you can find it on the Wall Street Journal website. I want to ensure you, the listeners, that when you read this complaint, this lawsuit is full of explicit content. So, viewer discretion is advised when you read this complaint, but I advise that everybody should read it because it describes an unethical, personal, and professional relationship that people must never duplicate. So here is a run-through of the complaint. Janel Grant is a former employee of WWE who was the victim of physical and emotional abuse, sexual assault, and trafficking at WWE. McMahon lived in a penthouse duplex in Mrs. Grant's apartment building. After her family passed away, Mrs. Grant dedicated herself to finding gainful employment. The building's resident manager wanted to help. She messaged McMahon to ask whether he would talk to her, sharing that Mrs. Grant had been through hardship and will do great things if given a great start. McMahon befriended Mrs. Grant, giving her hopes of a new life with promises of a yet-to-be-determined role at WWE. During several meetings about a potential job at WWE, McMahon greeted her in his underwear, touched her, repeatedly asked for hugs, and spent hours sharing intimate details about his personal life. After succumbing to the pressure of a physical relationship, Mrs. Grant was slotted into her entry-level position as an administrator coordinator, a job that McMahon created for her in WWE's legal department. In January 2022, McMahon told Mrs. Grant that his wife, Linda McMahon, found out about the relationship. So to avoid divorce, negative publicity, and other repercussions, McMahon said that Miss Grant's time at WWE was at an end, but that he wanted her to sign an NDA to ensure her silence on, among other things, his misconduct. Ultimately, Mrs. Grant succumbed to the pressure and signed the NDA in exchange of payments, which McMahon later stopped making. So this lawsuit is asking a court to declare her NDA invalid under federal law, including the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. She's also looking for a judgment for sorry about this. She's also looking for judgment for compensatory damages, reasonable attorney fees, costs, and punitive damages against defendants, and such other further relief as the court deems just and proper. Now, during the live airing of Friday Night SmackDown last week on Fox, we got breaking news involving Vince McMahon. This report was first reported by Deadline.com, and it states that Vince McMahon resigns from Endeavor-owned sports group after horrific rape and sex trafficking claims. Here's a quote from McMahon. And he says, I stand by my prior statement that Mrs. Grant's lawsuit is replete with lies, obscene, made-up instances that never occurred. This is a vindictive distortion of the truth. I intend to vigorously defend myself against these baseless accusations and look forward to clearing my name. However, out of respect for the WWE Universe, the extraordinary TKO business and its board members, shareholders, partners, and constituents, and all of the employees and WWE superstars who helped make WWE into the global leader it is today, I've decided to resign from my executive chairmanship and the TKO board of directors effective immediately. End quote. TKO referred deadline to McMahon's statement when contacted for more on the situation. As for who may take over McMahon's now vacated executive chairperson gig at the company, or even if that position will continue, it's all to be decided, sources say. WWE boss Nick Khan told staffers in an internal email that McMahon had resigned and will no longer have a role at TKO Group Holdings or WWE. Now, here's the question that I posed to my friends about the breaking news that Vince McMahon has resigned from his role at TKO and vacated his board of directors seat. Vince McMahon still owns about 19 million Class A typical stock in TKO Group Holdings. With McMahon vacating his executive chairperson gig while owning significant shares, does that mean that McMahon will no longer have a role with TKO Group Holdings or WWE? Owning significant shares in a company can give you a say in company matters, even if the company no longer employs you or you vacated a board gig. As a shareholder, you have the right to vote on important decisions such as the election of board members and significant company policies. The more shares you own, the more voting power you have. However, it's important to note that the shareholders do not have control over day-to-day operations or management decisions. For me personally, I see this as a veil being put over people's eyes yet again. You know, Vince once again says he's retiring from a position of power just to please sponsors like Slim Jim, who had paused and resumed their promotional activities with the 2024 WWE Royal Rumble event on Saturday. And also, to calm down selected members of the WWE Universe who support Mrs. Grant's lawsuit. Whether you believe it or not, in my opinion, Vince will still be a figurehead of TKO Group Holdings. And as I said a couple of seconds ago, McMahon owns about 19 million Class A TKO Group shares that, according to CNBC, and also brought up by NoDQ.com opinion columnist Mr. Tito, is worth around $1.7 billion USD. So if Endeavor were forced to pay McMahon $1.7 billion, it would already add to its $5 billion in debt to create $7 billion in debt to pay back in a higher interest rate environment. The amount of debt is a significant factor in if Endeavor will push McMahon fully out of the picture for good. And I also found what Mr. Tito over at NoDQ.com had to say further about a Vince McMahon revenge tour to be completely scary. Mr. Tito says, and I quote, time will tell if Endeavor ponies up the $1.7 billion to get Vince McMahon fully out of their lives. However, if they leave that door slightly open, he'll blast through that opening. Crazy thing, too, is that if Endeavor gives Vince that $1.7 billion, he'll probably spend it on something to get revenge against TKO or the WWE. Mr. Tito goes on to say, Endeavor should have considered retaining Vince McMahon's services during those 2022 allegations. They shouldn't have employed him to TKO's board chairman, and they shouldn't have let him own 16% of the TKO corporation from the start. Remember, up to 20 million of those legal statements and NDA signings occurred for the previous 20 years. What, you didn't think more horror stories would come out about Vince? Are you kidding me? Congrats to Endeavor for making a bad decision when clearly Triple H and Nick Khan were more than capable of running the company without Vince McMahon, end quote. Now, here's a scary thought to process if you're a parent. Imagine your daughter had found employment at a company which you later learn to find out that company's owner was exploiting female staffers. As a parent, that would make me, I would feel devastated. Even though my daughter wasn't touched, I would feel devastated if she was part of a company that acted like that. Well, if you didn't know, Ari Emanuel, who is the CEO of Endeavor, his daughter, during the time while Mrs. Grant was being forced into aggressive sexual encounters outside and at the WWE headquarters by McMahon and Laurinaitis, was employed by the WWE at this time. WWE hired Ari Emanuel's daughter named Ashley as a full-time employee in June 2021 to work as a creative writing assistant for the Raw band. The WWE, to this day, still employs Ashley. And, I further agree with Mr. Tito. Ari Emanuel appointing McMahon to TKO's board chairman, letting him own 60% of TKO Corporation from the start was totally wrong. And you know what? I would say Ari's probably glad that nothing happened to his daughter, but I'm not sure if Ari has a son, but if he's probably happy that his son wasn't also employed by WWE, because, can you imagine, if Ari's son was employed and Vince McMahon wanted him to engage in aggressive sexual encounters with Mrs. Grant? That would also be, if I was the father to my son who was employed at WWE, Vince McMahon included him into this unethical practices and sex trafficking, I'd be extremely devastated. I'd be wanting to rip McMahon's head off. So, if I was Ari Emanuel right now, I wouldn't care about TKO having this large amount of debt. I would just be looking right now to pay out the $1.7 billion to McMahon, because McMahon needs to go away for good. Now, I'd like to briefly discuss Saturday night and the WWE Royal Rumble press conference. Any long-term wrestling fan with a milligram of intelligence knew that somebody would ask questions, and everybody had to know the questions would be directed at Triple H, and they would need to be answered by Triple H. People at WWE, from high-ranking employees at WWE who made hiring decisions, conducted prospective employee interviews, and maintained significant control over personnel decisions, knew what was happening between Miss Grant, McMahon, and Laurinaitis and others, and didn't intervene. Men inside and outside the company, including members of the television production team, an executive, a world-famous athlete, and a former UFC heavyweight champion, also knew what was happening. Triple H wasn't explicitly named in the complaint, and people say that he's one of the 4 WWE corporate officers that were named in the complaint. Personally, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that, Triple H definitely knew what was going on. Triple H also knows that his father-in-law, Vince McMahon, had faced numerous prior accusations of sexual misconduct. So what happened on Saturday night was, I think Triple H did what he thought was best to deflect saying something that could cause legal ramifications. He is an executive, and I think he forgot he was one with some of his answers to the questions posted him on Saturday night. Triple H needed to be more prepared. He needed to have started this press conference, or his portion of the press conference, with a prepared speech. I don't think this trial will go to discovery, but and I think it will be settled before it arrives. I'm sure TKO Group is telling everyone to keep their head down no matter how pressed they are to answer the same questions. What people don't understand is, and even me, I've never worked with the WWE before, but what people don't understand is that, especially from reading this complaint, how scary it is working for the WWE with Vince McMahon in charge. WWE is a publicly traded private company. Now, I repeat that again. WWE is a publicly traded private company that practices exploitation to further its business and financial interests. Yes, people knew of McMahon's illegal conduct and did nothing to stop it, but why not? One of the reasons could be fear of retaliation from McMahon himself. It takes courage to speak up against illegal conduct, and companies must create a safe and supportive environment for employees to report wrongdoing. In this situation with Miss Grant, everybody was at fault, and speaking out against McMahon could likely find themselves blamed for the illegal conduct themselves. Now, in my opinion, the company's future remains uncertain as the investigation into Vince McMahon and WWE continues. The allegations against McMahon are very, very serious and could significantly impact the industry as a whole. Like, you could only imagine what could happen if this trial does go to discovery. We could see a clean out of WWE like you've never seen before. Some of the most beloved WWE figureheads could be out the door. So, I don't know what to say other than, fans in the industry, insiders are watching closely to see how the situation works. Myself here at Round Number One Radio will continue to provide updates as more information becomes available. I'd like to thank you for listening, and please stay tuned for more news and opinions from Round Number One. This is Michael. I'll talk to you next time.